over 20 people. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see everyone here. We have Kate Busby here today talking with us about AI. And just before I turn things over to her, I just wanted to make sure, and you guys probably all know about this because I've been posting on it about it on LinkedIn like crazy. But I wanted to make sure that everybody had seen that I launched Hey There Insights.
A
And
message from our sponsor.
exactly.
Like
My
and
sponsor,
subscribe.
which is me. Um, so it's only about 2 months old, has gotten off to an amazing start. Can people see my screen? Okay, good. I see Kate nodding. Um, just for anybody who doesn't know, this is a site that allows education orgs to post projects for educator input and feedback for payment. Um, from an organizational perspective, the thing that is happening by surprise, I would say, is that through the experience of offering insight and feedback, the educators start to use the products or they test them with their students. Or they say things like, oh my gosh, I work for Portland Public Schools and I need to take this up to my administration. So um, that's been very cool to see. We all know how hard it is to break into the market these days. And so I have been very pleasantly surprised by how this is just becoming another channel to connect with educators much more quickly and much more easily than pretty much anything I've ever tried. Um, so I wanted to just point you guys, I'll put it in the chat to this for organizations page, which gives the different ways that people post projects. So it's kind of, if you think about it a little more creatively than just input, put, or feedback, there's a lot of different ways that we want to connect with educators. And I've been testing pretty much all of them with my clients and have been, like I said, really pleased. So if anybody has any questions about this, I'm going to stay on at the end. And but yeah, has over 200 educators, over 50 orgs, and it's off to a really great start. Okay, without further ado, Kate is joining us to talk about AI, and she is a fresh CMO and marketing educator with deep roots in EdTech, and she's led growth at scale, including as a marketing director at NovaKid, and she advises and mentors startups around the world while teaching AI marketing, which she is going to teach us about today. I posted a poll last week about the topics that people would want to know about, asking about which topics you guys would want to know the most about. And over 50% of y'all said that you wanted to learn about go-to-market automations. So Kate and I had talked about posting that poll and wanted to use it to inform this session. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Kate. Where's Kate? You know what? I think she just dropped off on accident. I don't see her in the meeting anymore.
Somewhere in Barcelona, there are
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere in Barcelona.
there is profuse swearing going on.
Exactly.
Alana's here. Oh my God. And basically, and it will not surprise uh, Carly right now is laughing and being like, yeah, of course he is, because I count Kate as a friend too. And so, hi, Jess. Basically, while she's getting her things here, I just felt like I'd jump in, and that way, people who know both of us will be like, "Yeah, of course, Ian vamped while your technology situation sorted out," and then she's gonna laugh her ass off. And
Here she comes
yeah,
back in. I don't know if you guys heard.
exactly. I mean, like, I'm just having a webinar-filled morning. Like, there was the multimodal webinar that EdTech Insiders just did, and uh, that was cool. Oh, there's Kate. See, I was stalling for time for you as your hype man. And I will shut up now because heaven knows that enough people know that if you give me a microphone, I can talk. I'm gonna go bye now. Bye.
I'm sorry about that. I've got a new laptop, full disclosure, so I had to do the settings on Zoom thingy majiggy, but then I had to leave and come back. Anyway, I've been on a whole adventure in the 30 seconds. But yeah, thank you, Ian, for covering for me. It's always a delight to hear your voice. Hallie, shall I just go for it, or do
Yeah,
I need
jump on
to?
in. Yes.
Yeah,
What's
awesome,
up?
folks. Thank you so much, Hallie, for the invitation, and thank you, Ian, for connecting us. Credit where credit's due. I'm based in Barcelona, as Hallie mentioned. I'm a fractional CMO, knee deep in EdTech. I've worked in other sectors before, but I would say EdTech has been my mainstay, from Adobe Foundation to the British Council to more recently NovaKid, which is a Series B backed by Owl. And I would say that in the last 18 months, I've learned more about my own craft than I have done in my 13 years working as a marketer, which I think is a very good thing. And I wanted to share some of those learnings and insights with you guys tonight, particularly around AI automations. We did a little poll because we do believe in customer research and this marketing group. So I wanted to know what would be of particular interest. And so you set the agenda. I'm going to be talking tonight about what to automate within your marketing operation and perhaps what not to. Totally subjective, but I'm going to give you my 2 cents, and perhaps we can discuss it later on at the end in the Q&As. I'm going to be also talking about, it sounds very fancy, but it's actually very straightforward, the AI-powered intent engine architecture, looking at what a go-to-market strategy will typically consist of in its barest form, and then which elements can be automated and how. I'm also going to provide some demos and some workflows, use cases. And then, as I mentioned, we'll do a Q&A at the end. I'm going to try and keep this to 15 minutes. I do talk a lot, so I will try and take a breath, not to speak too quickly. And there are no housekeeping rules. If you want to jump in, feel free, unmute yourself, ask me a question. I can't see the chat very easily because it kind of blocks what I'm looking at to present. So I don't know, Hallie, if you see something in the chat and you think, stop, let's talk about that, like, please just signal to me and I'll
Yeah,
pause.
I'll watch the chat. No problem.
Awesome. So I guess the bottom line, and I'm probably not going to be the last person to say this, but we don't need to automate everything in marketing. In fact, there are definitely a few key components of, and bear with me, B2B people, of a D2C EdTech go-to-market strategy that perhaps shouldn't be touched. Now, it's again totally driven in terms of the choice by the culture of the company, by the product. But this is basically where I have observed automation taking place as a priority. Those would be the sections of the GTM in green. And the ones conversely in red would be the don't touch that. This is about one-to-one relationship building. We do not want to introduce robots into this equation. And then the amber colored areas of the GTM are, let's call it second order priority. We're not exactly sure where to automate, or we have some clues, but it's not something that we need urgently. I think when it comes to lead capture and lead nurture, if we're trying to build an operation at scale and we don't want to hire another marketer, which is definitely the narrative I'm hearing a lot these days within companies and outside of them, then using some kind of AI powered automation to scrape, to assort, to validate, then to provide prescriptive insights, and then take action on those insights, like send this to this person, send this to that person, is becoming more and more commonplace in the operation itself. And I think probably one of the biggest use cases that I see is in performance marketing, right? So using AI tools in order to not just research and create content for those ads, but also to understand, based on benchmark data that's publicly available from platforms like Meta, where in your industry the CPLs are performing, the CPCs, the CPLs are performing. So based on that, then the LLMs are going to then propose a strategy of what type of content to what type of audience, what type of targeting. And again, I'm not seeing any pure use cases of just AI. I'm seeing a lot of human-powered research, a lot of RAG thinking, so introducing insights from real-world surveys, sales conversations, desk research, so the traditional sources fed into AI, and then coming up with the strategy. I'm not seeing any operators 100% leaning on whatever they find on ChatGPT, for example. It's always a hybrid effort, and that site sources are always being asked of. the LLMs, right? Where are you getting this information from? Which is, I guess, a best practice for prompt engineering. So let's talk more about this intent engine, its components, from raw signals to actionable intelligence. Because again, what we're trying to do here, it's very straightforward. We're trying to save time, we're trying to save money, but we're also trying to use tools responsibly. So the intent data that can be fed into any kind of automation that we build on a platform like NA10 or a platform like make.com, it reveals the digital footprints that indicates a prospect's likelihood to purchase. We know, and I'm sure most of us on this call love doing customer research, those beautiful one-to-one conversations, those survey monkey forms that we send out to get real world data. But I think a lot of the time, and again, I'm not going to be the first or the last to say this, what people say is not often what they do, or there's sometimes a discrepancy between the two. So it's really, really great to talk to customers and prospects to get those initial gems or insights that you can then test at scale through surveys or paid ads. But actually what I find is that if you think through intent data, not necessarily through customer surveys, you get a better idea of how cohorts behave, how they buy, where they go to buy or to inform themselves. And this is the meat and potatoes of the intent engine that we build through AI. Obviously, we have a choice between first-party and third-party intent signals, the first-party signals being the ones that we often lack the most when we're a startup, but nevertheless will grow and be enriched over time. I'm not going to go through them. We know them all. And then the third-party signals as well are the ones that we ideally want to scrape and get from different sources. Scraping is, for me, such an ugly idea and word, but it actually is completely legal. Obviously, there are some scrapers out there that are not, but the idea of, and I'm going to show you a scraping automation that I've built in a second, the idea of actually being able to harvest data that's publicly available at pace, at scale, and then distill it into a series of actionable insights, for me, is the pure magic and the whole reason why personally I'm interested in AI-powered automation. So it's really gathering those third-party signals at scale, which are probably the ones most accessible to a startup that has relatively little to no data of its own, in order to make decisions and at pace, as I said. So the intent engine architecture will always have the ingestion layer, right? The public data that we scrape and we gather. Then there's going to be a processing pipeline here. And this is where AI comes in, right? Because after we've scraped all those tweets, all those X's, if we call them, so what, right? I mean, how are we going to distinguish between something that's useful and actionable and something that's not? Well, the processing pipeline is going to be able to identify intent signals in those tweets and then be able to tell us, okay, this is something that might be useful to you as part of your marketing operation. The ML models at the stage where you actually get the classification. So the processing pipeline is scanning and looking, and then the actual ranking of the content in terms of usefulness is what happens at the ML stage. And then the activation layer of the automation is where you say, okay, I've got this fantastic piece of content that I've scraped from Twitter. This person's probably my buyer, judging by what he or she is writing in her tweet or his tweet. Now I want to do something with this. So in the automation I'm going to show next, the activation layer will be to actually create a reply generated by AI to that tweet based on my intent as a marketer to then establish a relationship. And using Claude, of course, because Claude is the LLM that's trained on human language in part, and therefore arguably provides the most natural sounding copy when it's generated through that platform. And then the feedback loop, often not talked about, but very important. You want to add some layer of human approval into all of your automations where possible and where necessary, but often it's necessary. When the LLM at the activation layer is punching out an action that you should take, then you want to be able to say, yes, I approve. And then the automation will go on to actually publish a reply to that tweet or send that email. But human in the loop is a concept in automation that we really should bear in mind. It doesn't mean when we automate that everything is hands off. And I think for a lot of us, that would be kind of scary, losing control completely, right? So the feedback loop is that final human touch to ensure that the quality of the automation is on point. Okay, so machine learning models. I think I'm not going to go too deep into this because it's essentially like what we kind of already know, right? That the way that the technology works is that you feed it signals, it learns, it provides ever sophisticated answers to what you're trying to find out. And I think it's probably just, I'm going to pause here briefly because when it comes to automations, there are definitely two model types and applications. And I talked about the latter, the unsupervised learning a little bit. It is a valid type of automation to have something running in the background while you sleep. One example that comes to mind is a tool that can do market research, like on a constant loop, looking for trends. So if you're in the market for a particular product and you want to, it's a fast moving consumer goods product, for example, and there are constant competitors launching things, you may want to have an unsupervised automation running in the background that's constantly pushing out reports to your Slack channel or to your email saying, this is new, keep an eye on this competitor. This one is, definitely dangerously close to your positioning in the market. You should think about reacting to that in some meaningful way around your own brand positioning, for example. But then the supervised part is what I described previously. You have your human in the loop, you have your automation running, but you have that pause point where you can decide whether what the automation is giving you is actually of use or useless. So I'm just going to briefly share an automation that I've been building this week. I'm not sure if you can see my screen because I'm just going to flip between tabs now. Tell me if you can't. But essentially, my automation starts with a database. I think not all automations have a database, but when, for example, you're harvesting data or you're trend seeking or you're keeping an eye on your competitors and you're using, for example, keywords as your ingestion layer, then having a database is pretty important because here, you're going to have, in my case, I'm using some queries because I want to see what's being said in this case, Twitter or X around AI for marketers. I could go into a whole reason why I'm doing that, but I don't want to bore you to tears. But like I'm looking for this type of content on Twitter because I've identified in a previous life that my go-to-market strategy needs to be on X. My buyer is on X. Okay, I validated that. So now I'm setting up my automation to constantly scan and scrape content from X that's around the topic of AI for marketers. Then once I've got my queries clear, and I've used a tool like answerthepublic.com to find the types of queries around the product that I'm interested in. Okay, so I've got those queries downloaded from Answer the Public, pop them in Airtable in my database, and then I connect the database to relay.app through an API. I do that here. Okay, so I basically, when you create an automation, you just press the plus button, you just get a blank canvas with a plus. Then you look for the node that you need to connect. So I want to connect my database to the automation to kick it off. So then I connect Airtable. You can see the icon there. And then I find the record that I'm looking for. You can see in my previous screen that it's a file called social media mentions and the tab is queries. So I just find that in relay.app, connect it up, and then start building the rest of the automation. And I use a series of nodes, and they're very easy to find and click on and add to your automation. It's just simple as going add step. And there are so many of them, hundreds of nodes that you can choose from. But I've obviously selected it here, but you would just look for the tweets one, search for tweets, add it, and then connect your Twitter account. And that's something I've already done. And then here we have the next and almost final section of the automation, which is the processing and classification part of the automation. So here I'm adding a node called validate tweets, and then I'm putting my prompt, which I've created separately in ChatGPT, to say, well, your task, your role is a social listening expert. When you look at all these tweets, basically, I want you to tell me what's interesting, what could be a tweet by a potential buyer of the product that I'm thinking of. And here are some of the clues. So here are the sort of intent signals that that person might have. And then click done. Okay. And then if the tweet is valid, so it's basically been scanned, processed, classified from useful to useless, and then the useful ones are basically put into this part of the automation, which is if relevant. So it's a kind of if this then that logic. And again, you just add a node by searching for it in the library of nodes. And then I've added in the draft response another prompt, again created in a separate LLM, where I've said, okay, so read the tweet, make sense of it. I'm a marketer. I'm interested in talking about this type of topic for this reason. Write a convincing reply to this tweet. Simple as that, okay? And I add as much detail as necessary to really ensure that the reply to the tweet that's going to be crafted is relevant. And then I have it sent to my email. So this is the validation or the feedback part, right? So this is where I, as a human, I'm going to look at the results and I'm going to say, yes, I like that, or no, I don't like that. Now, I haven't added the final bit to create the loop of the automation, but it would be basically as simple as going to Twitter and then connecting my Twitter account via an API key. Won't go into all of that, but essentially a code that allows you to connect Twitter to relay.app. And then I can basically say, once approved, here's a click. You can then publish this as a reply on the tweet that you've identified is of someone who's interested in potentially buying this product. And that's kind of it. And so at one point I was changing this, swapping this out for sending it to my Slack, because I kind of live on Slack rather than email. And just to give you an idea of like what that looks like, okay, when I run the automation, it like sends me to a specific channel in Slack that I've created especially for this project. It just shoots out like every few minutes a tweet that's relevant, and then it comes up with the reply, and then I can then copy and paste that, go to the tweet and then reply, or I can say, nope, that sounds really cringe, I'm not going to do that. But here's the idea that you have ingestion layer, you have the processing layer, you have the classification layer, you have the output, right, which is the reply, and then the human in the loop that's going to complete the feedback. And that's it. That really is as complex as automation gets. Of course, if you've ever run into the troubleshooting in automation, you'll know how really frustrating it can be. But really, I wanted to give this demo to almost signal that if you haven't already signed up for a free account, and I'm not an affiliate, on NA10 or Make.com or Zapier, and haven't tried this out, like really have fun with it. One of the coolest things, if you're not really into building, is you can simply go to NA10, sign up for a free account, and prompt like what you want. You can say, look, I would like to scrape Twitter for AI marketing topics, and I would like to classify them as, by intent signals, and these are the intent signals that my buyer might have. And then I want you to formulate a response and then send it to me on Slack. And you just literally write this into the chat on NA10 and it will build it for you. So even if you're not into, the manual kind of craft of putting together nodes and connecting them and all that kind of thing, you can just use the chat function on NA10 and probably other platforms as well. They're all evolving extremely fast. I think going into like the use cases for automation is probably a little bit, I don't know, redundant at this stage. I mean, I think that there are definitely things to be said about using automation to score leads, especially in B2B situations. I mean, we all know about the eternal war between marketing and sales teams, particularly in sort of B2B high stakes environments. I think having a reliable sort of lead scoring system, first of all, agreed upon by sales and marketing, that's the first human step. And then automating that can potentially get a lot better quality leads at scale without necessarily having to add on headcount or add more SaaS tools into the mix, or or anything that would substantially increase time and spend. And I think personalization at scale is kind of the original kind of poster child for why we use ChatGPT and LLMs, right? That we can not only create content extremely fast and incredibly tailored to different target audiences, but it's something that the LLMs are getting much better at doing. And we're not just talking textual content here. I was cheered to see that finally ChatGPT are pulling its socks up and trying to push its visual content functionalities, because many a tear has been shed when I've tried to create imagery on ChatGPT, but I can see that they realized it was a bit of a weakness compared to the other platforms that are pulling ahead in that regard. But anyway, personalization at scale is something that we all have probably all tried and experimented with. And I think there's one thing to say here, that I have been surprised at how slow companies have been to adopt AI and automation in their marketing operation. And I think if I could leave you with one message today, it would be that even if in the context of your fractional work or your employment with a company that perhaps is a little hands off when it comes to using AI and automation, just test it for yourself. A Sunday painter type gig where you just have a fun, just trying something, automating your own LinkedIn posts. I don't know how many of us here enjoy. I mean, there are some who enjoy writing LinkedIn posts, but although I am a fairly regular contributor to this platform, I have to say it's not always the most it's not always the painless process, put it like that. And finding ways to actually automate useful, on point, trend kind of setting or commenting type posts, build your own automation and then approve the content, or take the content as a first draft and edit it and put it out, or even set yourself up so that you can just approve it on Slack and then it gets published on LinkedIn and you don't even have to go to LinkedIn. I mean, there are loads of things that you can do to test it out. So I'd say build your own automation. I was going to do a whole section on like, let's build together. And then I spoke to a colleague today who said, don't do that. So I'm not going to do that. But I would say for anyone who is interested in a kind of online hackathon environment, I do have a kind of, not club, that sounds like really 1990s. I do have a group of people online who I work with, and we do hackathons and office hours. So if you're interested, here's the QR code. You can join us. And that's kind of a wrap. Thank you, Hallie.
Thank you. You got my mind working. I'm like, ooh, what can I do? Well, let's open it up for questions. People are commenting some things. I think one very concrete question is, you were talking about a couple AI workflow tools, and Anna and I went to Google them, and we were wondering which one, the one that starts with an N, which one is that?
Yes. Yes. You can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
I think, yeah, if you go to nan.io.
Oh, N8, and okay, because I found a different one called N10 AI, which I don't know what the difference is, but
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are loads more out there. There's make.com. Oh, that would help if I spelled it correctly. There's make.com, and then there's everyone's favorite Zapier, which is definitely getting more AI features as we speak. So these are like, they all have a freemium version, which is nice. And unless you're doing like heavy duty automations, you don't need to pay. I mean, if you're going to run 100 automations for your business, I mean, you're probably going to have to pay like $20 to $50 a month. It's not extortionate.
yeah. How come you chose Relay? I'm going to start with my question right off the bat, as opposed to the others. For yours.
What was the question? Sorry, Hallie, I think I missed the.
Oh, I'm wondering why you chose Relay for your example that you shared. Like, what is different about Relay from some of the others?
I would say Relay is a builder's tool. So if you want to kind of get comfortable with nodes and API keys and kind of the vocabulary of automation, I would recommend relay.app. I mean, if you go to NAN, the seduction to just prompt what you want is enormous, which is fine. Um, I have seen people do this, and NAN will create the most crazy, complex, orchestrated automations. And since you don't have that base vocabulary to understand what makes sense and what's probably superfluous, you end up with automations that are just much heavier and slower, and more unnecessarily complex than they need to be. So when you learn the basics, I mean, it's learning your verbs, your nouns, your adjectives, right? It's just getting the basics right. Relay is perfect for that. And then when you have that discernment, that confidence, then going and prompting is just a breeze. It's great.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'm thinking we're just going to see how this goes. If people just kind of want to come off mute and jump in, or you can raise your hand and we can do it that way, whatever you feel comfortable with. But let's try just having people ask.
I can jump in. Hey, Kate, it's Alana. Hey, I'm wondering, like, because you mentioned Claude,
Hmm.
and when we're thinking about like responses and also even just generating, like, and I'm like, you got me thinking too, like Hallie was saying, is like when we're thinking about repeatable tasks that we do, how can we get ahead of it with automations and then be able to tweak it? But in order to do that, there's like a foundation of voice and brand tone and maybe loading up the database of all the things you've written in the past and all that. And you mentioned Claude, like
Hmm.
how does that all plug into the workflows and stuff? So it generates something that's a bit more workable to start with.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think, when I put together this automation that I was showing you tonight, like it seems like that was kind of it. I just made a database and I just made the automation by connecting a bunch of nodes, but actually there was a whole base layer of thinking around, like what topics represent my brand and do I want to be getting into conversations about this topic? Will my future potential buyer be giving signals that suggest buyer's intent by talking about this topic? Like there were a whole tangle of questions that I had to think about, that I had to answer. And some of them I co-piloted with a tool like Claude. Now, I personally use Claude for outputs more than for thinking partner work. When it comes to that, I use Perplexity for research, as in more kind of, I would say, yeah, market research. When it comes to actually thinking through questions and trying to find the right question, I would turn to ChatGPT because I think its capabilities when it comes to analysis are actually very useful, especially when you use it in the correct way, when you cite sources. You don't just allow it to hallucinate, you really try and wrangle it, so that it gives you more or less accurate answers. And then Claude would be for any kind of copywriting, it would be for any kind of social media content creation. So each tool would kind of have its place in the research process leading up to me then creating the automation. I don't know if that made sense. Like, feel free to dig in, like if you
No,
need.
no, you're cool. Yeah, I was just trying to like notice that there was a foundation that was built into this, and I was trying to figure out how
Yeah.
to like, connect it all and how it does it. But this was really helpful to see the back end too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when it comes to automation, like the way that I think about it is I start with the whole operation actually, and I try and understand where am I going to get the most leverage, save the most time, save the most money, basically, by exploring automation, and I guess you have to think about your current resources, right? Like if you've already got a team of 55 people, there's very little need necessarily to start looking at automation. But for the solopreneur, for the small team, the small scrappy team, I mean, there's so much potential to like look at low cost tools that can effectively work whilst you guys are sleeping, right? And you wake up in the morning, you've got a whole bunch of Slack messages with like, people that you could contact for partnerships and articles that you could write and cite people who you want to like reach out to on social media because they also like that topic too. So that's kind of where I stand with this. Like I look at the bigger picture, see where I can get the most leverage, at what point, and then I go into asking the questions. Okay, like I'm going to automate lead capture. Okay, so what do I need to think about? Intent signals. I need to think about platforms. Like, are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Twitter? Like, I have to make a decision because also I don't want to. I mean, you could spread yourself thin using AI and automation tools, but also that might not be appropriate for your brand either, right? So that's yeah. I kind of start big and then get narrower and narrower and narrower until I've got like a platform, a type of topic that I care about or that shows intent. And then like I then go into the messiness of the tools, like which tool am I going to use and like how many nodes is it going to have and what do I want it to do at what point? And yeah, so I talk a lot, right? I don't know. I think Ian, maybe you talk a bit more than me, but like I am closely competing with you, I think.
Well, you are our presenter, Kate. So yeah, Tova asked a question that I was wondering also, and I'm hearing this across orgs because different leaders, different founders have different tools they're using, right? So like I'll hear like, well, no, you should use, ChatGPT deep thinking version da 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 for this thing, and you should use Gemini. Gemini's really getting good, and you should use it for this thing. But oh no, Claude is getting really good at vibe coding, whatever. Do you have recommendations or a cheat sheet, is what Tova specifically asked for? Um, or even just like a mental model in your head. It kind of sounds like you do, where you're like, okay, if I want to do this, I use this. For this, I use this. Could you share? Oh, you're on mute.
Here we go. Yes is the short answer. And the long answer is I'm going to send you an article. Because
Okay. I was thinking somebody probably wrote about this already.
wrote
Yeah.
about this. Yeah, forgive the poor little doggy with the terrible hat. I don't even I must have been it must have been 3 a.m. when I wrote this article, guys. But because I was getting really frustrated with all the hype around LLMs and just the constant overload of information, I decided to create an article, probably for my own sanity more than anything else, comparing each LLM to a restaurant. As I said, it was probably somewhere in the darker hours of the morning here in Barcelona that I was crafting this. But um, stick with me here. I feel that like by showing the different powers of each LLM, it will allow you to see them not as a tiresome list of endless options, but actually a fantastic menu, a buffet that you can choose from to really get the right tool for the right job. So I will obviously share this with you, but like the way I see it, and this is controversial. I'm sure some people won't agree with my choice of restaurants, but I said ChatGPT is like a 3-star Michelin restaurant. Executive friendly, intelligent approach, notoriously bad at bulk. This is where you go for your high stakes strategic work, business strategy, top line summaries. But if you need email variations or paid ad variations by the hundreds, you do not touch it. And so it goes on. I think, yeah, I may have used Shake Shack, KFC in there. If anyone's seen Jiro Jeans of Sushi, there's a reference there as well for you. But I'll share this with the community afterwards because I would love to hear also contrarian views because I know ChatGPT is definitely the house favorite, but I don't think everyone likes it, So I'd be really curious to know like how people have used it or avoided it. Definitely. I mean, we're all here to learn. But yeah, I thought I would share that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello there. I have a question. Thank you for the presentation, by the way. My name is Andres, and I am one of those solopreneurs cases. And definitely one of my immediate questions was, how do you start positioning yourself whenever you are pretty much breaking into an industry? I would assure that most of you have some type of experience in the industry, whether you were educator, you work in the industry, or you just are sales. For that tech, right? So, but in my case, it's a little bit different because, for instance, one of the solutions that I built, it started
Mhm.
because of a pain point that my wife, who is an educator, had. From
Mhm.
that point, it expanded into an actual solution.
Mm.
Long story short, the connections, the background, I could start setting some of these automations and start replying to hopefully some of prospects and leading,
Mm.
nurturing some leads there. But
Mm.
from the perspective of, you know, credibility, from what I've learned so far is that you earn that credibility, they know you, you
Yeah.
know. And right now, for my personal case, I don't feel like I'm there. Like I'm just trying to get it there. So
Hmm.
just a thought there. How would
Well,
you handle it in that case? That's
yeah, I mean, I think I would answer this question by moving slightly away from AI and automation, to be honest with you, which I know was the topic of tonight's presentation, but I'm super open to share views on different topics within marketing. Um, I look a little bit, I'm going to answer this with an example, which is Hallie, your fantastic innovation, where you have with Hey There Insights, you've kind of solved a problem that was latent in the ed tech space for a really long time. And, in terms of positioning, I mean, I feel that it almost, I don't like to use the phrase took on a life of its own, but because it solved such a specific problem for so many people on both sides of the marketplace, kind of a masterstroke. um, you talk about credibility, right? I think that the product at some point, if it really solves a problem, it speaks for itself. You don't need to talk around it or like try and bump it up or hype it up. I think that it does its job and then the word of mouth factor takes over. And in, Hallie, your case, the educators are probably sharing it with one another saying, hey, you want to make some extra bucks because you're out of work, but you're still an educator and you still have that rich experience and that authority to share, you know, check this site out. And then on the other side, by golly, every single client I've worked for over the last few weeks since it came out, I've said, you have to check this out. And it's pure word of mouth marketing because the product has done such a great job. It doesn't make marketing redundant, but it certainly makes our job a lot easier. And if you're marketing yourself, yeah, which is probably the hardest job of all, to be honest, speaking from personal experience. But if you solve a very specific problem and you can figure out what that problem is, I feel like you're 90% done. And then after that, it's about tweaking the messaging, whether it's visual messaging or textual messaging or channels you show up on. But yeah, I think that would be my answer. Like if you can really nail down that problem that you solve as an expert, and you're kind of one of one, like there are not too many more Andres out there, doing exactly the same thing as you, then I think that is already a lot of your positioning work done, and then you just make the final touches. Does anyone disagree with me? I'm on a call with very senior and expert marketers. I would love some debate and also maybe an alternative answer for Andres because there is no one answer, I would say. Does anyone want to jump in? Oh,
I mean, I 100% agree, Kate. I think it's all about the problem you're solving. Can you clearly show and communicate what that is? And um, I just loved your point of Kate saying like, it's like you can put lipstick on a pig, but it all comes back to the product. And
totally.
I worked for a company that just was not evolving with customer need. And like our marketing was doing pretty well, but it didn't matter because the product wasn't selling. And a marketing can't save a product. Um, and so I'm
I
kind of saying the same thing.
I agree with that. I mean, maybe there's one, I'm just thinking one exception. So if you think of somebody who works for Nike, right? Like the president of a division in Nike, you might say that they have so much brand equity on their CV that they could be mediocre at their job, but if they go to another company to get a new position because they have Nike on their crowning achievement on their CV, they can get a free pass into that company. They probably don't even have to do an interview or a business case. They just get like, here's your seat. Now, I think that there is something to say about brand driving acquisition, but I
Mm,
don't believe brand retains or helps, that relationship build. And I think that at some point a brand without a product alignment. So lousy product, but great brand. I think that at some point there's decay and the power of that brand decays. I really believe, like as Hallie has just said, if the product is really shining, and one of the examples that also jumps to my mind is Lovable. I think that this is probably one of the master classes in brand and brand building that I've seen, because the product delivers so much wow factor, at least the first time you use it. I don't know if you've used Lovable, Andres, but if you ever want to build an app or a website in like 5 seconds with all the bells and whistles, then try Lovable. But like they have such a great communications, community driven, heartfelt, mindful communications about helping and uplifting people. It's everything just ties in to this sort of clear proposition that they can just do incredible things with no code, for the likes of you and me who maybe not programmers, right? So product's amazing, brand's amazing, but if product's not, then amazing brand loses its momentum after a while, I would say. Sorry, someone was trying to speak. Being quiet.
May have been me, so I'm gonna just continue to be.
Other questions? We have a few people concerned in the chat about your computer about to die, Kate.
It is 4%, guys. Can we squeeze it in?
Everyone's just
I'm
feeling your stress.
I'm one of those people. I don't know if it's adrenaline, but I just like live on the edge like that.
I do that with my gas tank.
Can I make it?
I was wondering if you have been using automation tools for Facebook groups, or if you have any other suggestions for doing that at scale.
Jessica, sorry, at least I couldn't hear like the question like super clearly. Do you mind repeating it? Sorry about that.
Yeah, sure. I have a little bit of background noise. I was wondering if you were using these automation tools with Facebook groups for scraping, or if you found any other tools that are good for that for Facebook groups.
Yes, so there's a fantastic website called Appify. I think it's appify.com, but you can Google Appify and you'll find it all the same. And it's basically a marketplace of ready-made automations for literally any platform, including Meta, like for any use case, essentially. It's like an ever-growing list of ready-made automations. There is a cost if you decide to use one of those automations that goes to the developer, but it's not that much. I mean, we're talking like tens rather than hundreds, to sort of almost as a gesture. And then you can make your own copy of the automation and then plug in all your different platforms, your Meta accounts and whatever, and then it's yours. So I would definitely check that out. Yeah. Scraper tools, anything you can think of, it's all there. Appify. Yeah.
In terms of sparking conversation, and certainly both Hallie, Kate, and several other of you know that anytime a room goes quiet, I have a hard time. One of the questions, you miss me, Kate.
I do.
The question that I kind of want to pose, me being me on this one, and this is not to Kate. Kate and I will go back and forth. I kind of want to know from everyone, like best Gen AI and marketing disaster. And I will even start on this one. Oh, Alana's like, speaking of people who know me well, I will even start with this one. So I'm currently working for 3P Learning. We are having a damn good time because obviously we work with Alana. That's, clearly everything. Mwah. And one of the things that's going on, so we have a B2C vertical and a B2B vertical, and we have some global paid stuff. So on Meta, we used some of like the adaptive Gen AI stuff. Oh, do you know exactly? I didn't even tell you this. So we do love especially on the B2C side, we're very much about the free trial, and on the B2B side, trying to tell them that that's not a good idea in the United States. Is a thing. So anyway, this all got plugged into Meta, and somewhere in the is yo mama a llama of it all, our ads with CTAs for free trial started spinning automatically into, yes, you best it, Kate, offering free. You can use this for free on this one. So that is my contribution to this one. Any other things that have just gone disastrously wrong, even if it's a minor disaster, on Gen AI? I'm kind of curious to know from the audience.
Listen, if no one responds, I've got a backup, but it's like a pale imitation of what you've just shared.
I can even go more because there's some personal project, but continue.
I mean, go ahead, Kate, but like I just last week accidentally turned down the AI companion for Zoom and I didn't know I did it, and it started doing it for all my meetings. And it'll automatically send the transcript to anyone who's on the meeting. And if you've ever had a meeting where you end it, but then you just debrief with your team or something like that right afterwards, and I'm like, so AI gone wrong, and I just turned it off entirely for my entire instance after that. And I'm still
We have invited Big Brother into our meetings, and so like, how are you supposed to have the? I mean, there's a ritual to these things, and anybody who's been in any sort of corporate environment, you have to have the meeting before the meeting, then the meeting, and then the meeting after the meeting. Like, but we don't talk about any of that, and like the meeting after the meeting has become very dangerous in the age of AI.
We had an incident. We always end the meeting and go offline, like phone calls. If it's like a debrief about personnel or whatever, we had an incident.
Well, we are at 6 minutes to the hour. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you for inviting me.
Like I said, my head is spinning. I don't even know where to start. I have so many ideas. Yeah, really appreciate it. We will regroup last Friday of February. I don't know what that date is off the top of my head. But I hope to see you all there. I don't know what the topic is going to be, but if anybody wants to speak on a particular topic, you are welcome to do that and just reach out and let me know. If anybody has questions about, hey, their insights, I'm going to hang on for a little bit. And otherwise, have a great weekend, everyone. And thanks again to Kate and to everyone for coming.